Welcome to the Relationship Recovery Podcast, hosted by Jessica Knight, a certified life coach who specializes in narcissistic and emotional abuse. This podcast is intended to help you identify manipulative and abusive behavior, set boundaries with yourself and others, and heal the relationship with yourself so you can learn to love in a healthy way.
Hello and welcome back. Before we get started, I just want to remind you of a few updates. The Patreon is now available, open, and I am adding videos. I'm going to have every video I've ever made up there. It's going to take some time to get them all up there, but I would say within a month they will all be there. So if you want to hold off and wait, if you want to join now, totally up to you. I will also be using this as a Q&A and where I will post the Q&As. So if you have a question, you can feel free to email it in to jessicaknightcoaching.com. But I have so many questions I've been asked over the last few years that I'm going to use the first one as people are getting set up and kind of coming into it, learning about it, to be more of a overview questions of here are the ones that I've gotten over time. There's a lot that intersect, of course. Second thing is that my emotional abuse recovery course is always available, and it's available online at emotionalabusecoach.com. Now that we've gotten the fine print out of the way, I want to let you know that I do think that this episode is probably one of the most important that I will record, and I am recording it without a script because I just feel compelled to talk about this. I have been posting about it on Threads and posting a lot of these themes on Threads, and I am pleased to see that people are resonating with it because I think that understanding the cycle of abuse is one of the most helpful things when we're going through this process of understanding what we're going through and seeing it happen and beginning to put ourselves in that cycle and seeing where we are. And once we start to see the cycle, we usually can't unsee it. I very, very clearly remember saying to a therapist a few years back, maybe many years back, I don't know. I remember saying, I feel like I'm in calm. And if I find that I'm in calm right now, I have to leave because I've seen enough at this point. So if this is just the calm cycle, then I need to, or the calm stage in the cycle of abuse, that I've seen enough. And if it is not, then I have a different kind of relationship that I need to be thinking about and working on. And there's clearly issues, but it's a different path. But it was very, very much, I'm either in calm or I'm not. And I don't know just yet. And so it ended up that I was just in the calm stage of abuse. But it is very helpful. It's one of the most helpful things to understand and to see the nuance in it all. And after speaking with a client the other day, where the cycle of abuse came up, as it normally does, because it is so helpful, I started to think like in the cycle, there's never repair. In the cycle of abuse, we never actually repair anything. And if you go on Instagram and you're looking at all these helpful posts about what healthy relationships look like and what relationships need, you're going to see the word repair. You're going to see a lot of words. You're going to see safe. You're going to see emotional maturity. You're going to see regulated. You're going to see all these words that really matter and that can be applied to safe relationships. But when you go and look at that and you're like, but I'm not in a safe relationship, we usually try and apply them anyway because we're human beings. And what else are we going to do, right? We're seeing that we need repair. We're seeing that we need to begin to come back together with our partner. And I've said this on a lot of episodes. When you're in the cycle of abuse, you do love them. You love the version of them that you're seeing. You love the hope that you have for them. You might even love this part, like all of them. I believe you love them. I certainly was in love with people that were harmful and had a lot of justification. So this isn't like a shaming, I need to just get out of it. This is more like when you see those things, you want your relationship to be one that can have that, because why wouldn't you? Of course you do. And in this conversation with this client, as we were talking through it, she was like, I just keep trying to get to the repair. And it's almost like he doesn't know how to. And I just paused and said, he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to repair. Repair would mean that he'd have to look at himself. He'd have to take accountability. He'd have to see his role, and he'd have to leave space to be wrong about how he views your role. He doesn't want to repair. He wants the illusion of a repair so that the cycle continues. Let's take a step back and talk about the cycle of abuse. The cycle of abuse often goes through 4 stages, main stages, and it's tension, the abusive incident, reconciliation, and the calm. The cycle can happen in a day, in an hour, in a month. You might even have gone a year without it. But it's always there in abusive dynamics. And when we can start to see where we are in the cycle, it can help us begin to prepare a bit and to see what is happening, which over time will help us depersonalize what's happening because you start to see that this is in the cycle. Just to be clear, abuse is any and every action that has the intention to exert control or hurt somebody else. It is about establishing and demonstrating power and control over somebody. And now, when we look at these stages, they're all about maintaining that control. And so the calm stage is typically the honeymoon stage, or the most amount of honeymoon we're going to get when we're in a long-term or post 3 months relationship with somebody. It is the closest to that we're going to get. The calm stage is literally like we're not fighting. Calm is keeping the peace. Calm is maybe a moment where you both decided not to talk about something. Calm is silencing yourself. Calm is not calm. Calm is as calm as it's going to get. And maybe tensions are not rising in this one moment. Calm may be being able to watch a show together. It might be attending a birthday party together for your kids. Calm might be being able to get through a vacation. Calm might look like the best thing. Calm may be a time where you're having conversations that seem like they're going places. Calm may be like, oh my God, I did X, Y, Z, and he actually appreciated it and thanked it. Wow. Calm feels like the best thing. But that's because it's the best we're going to get. Calm is not always safe. Calm is not a space where you can feel secure and talk about your feelings. Calm is not being able to clearly articulate how you feel and having somebody not be defensive. Calm is probably silencing yourself. Calm is uncomfortable because what comes out of calm is tensions rising. And so in an abusive relationship, there's probably always little ways tensions rise. But when we're in calm, we usually, and I mean, going into tensions rising, we're trying to suppress them. You know, there's so often we're trying to not lean into it, not react to it, we're realizing these things are happening and maybe we're changing our behaviors or we're checking with our coach or our therapist. We are not adding fuel to the fire. The fire is going. But then when we don't add fuel, a lot of times it adds fuel anyway, which is a lot of the nuance around the tensions rising is like tensions rise and you didn't even do anything. I often think back to this one moment that I had where I was in calm and we had so many great days before. We acknowledged it. We talked about it. We acknowledged it in therapy. We talked about in therapy about how let's talk about how we can keep this and what has been working. It was like one of those therapy sessions that you're like, oh my God, I always wanted this, where we're like talking about what's working and we're like clearly talking to each other about where issues lied and then how we cannot do that in the future. I was like, that was one of those moments where I felt like this is not the cycle of abuse. Maybe this is really just not understanding each other and maybe like talking past each other, blah, blah, blah. You know, so much more after, as always. But maybe a day after I got sick, couldn't show up in the ways I was showing up, couldn't even really be that responsive because I was super sick, and tension started to rise. And then things were happening. But in the past 2 weeks, I could clearly say anything. And I remember sending a text and then being like, oh, he's not going to like this. And then instead of just like apologizing or something like that, I called and said, I know I just sent this and you might read it the wrong way. And I just wanted to make sure. And I just like, was like, just to clarify, this is what I meant, but like, hope you're having a good day, blah, blah, blah. He was so mad at me. And that's when I realized, fuck, here we go again. A week ago, he would have been so grateful that I called and I clarified before he read it so that he didn't have a chance to take it the wrong way. And I was self-aware enough to know that like the way I worded something could land differently, especially for somebody who's at work and is picking up their phone and reading it. The tension never went down from that moment. And at that moment, I was so frustrated. And that's what led to a lot of rewriting history, which I think happens a lot in the tension building stage. It's not that the 2 weeks were great anymore, even though we had this therapy session that sort of like put the exclamation point on it. It was, yeah, but. And then, but this was a problem and this was a problem. And when you came over and brought me those things and were so caring and loving, that was actually a problem because you did it because you felt like you had to. Everything I did, everything I thought, everything I felt was wrong. I couldn't think for myself. I couldn't think for, no, I was like, no, I didn't do that at all. Like, I was so happy to see you. Or like, I remember there was this one night, like I barely slept through the night. All day, I was like, I just want to show up and I want to show up well for him. I know I can be so crabby when I don't sleep. And I caught myself, like, I remember one of the ways that I take care of myself when I'm like really feeling down is like, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I just kind of keep taking showers. Like, I'll be like, a morning shower, an afternoon shower. I'll take another shower at night. It just feels like it takes the day off of me. I like the idea that I can like redo my whole self in a way and show up and try and show up better. I remember being like, I showered like 3 times today because I knew that I could be this thing, like this person, and it didn't matter. Nothing I did mattered. Nothing I felt mattered. My well-being didn't matter. The fact I needed water before having a conversation didn't matter. Nothing mattered. And I think that's something we don't think about is that how in the tension building stage, it's not only building from emotional outbursts from the other person, irritability, impatience, and their shortness of temper, but it's also coming from they're rewriting history. They are gaslighting us. So when we're being gaslit, now we're getting defensive. So our tension is rising too, because now we want to defend against all of this unjust things, all of these, like they're getting in our brain and telling us what we're thinking. Like, it's like we spend so much time then now trying to calm down that tension when they're amping it up and amping it up and amping it up. Right. And when we're gaslit, we're most of the time, we're like, what is going, like, stop. I don't think that. I didn't feel that. So the tension rises and it rises on both sides because usually after the calm stage, the victim is trying so hard just to keep it calm. If we can get a few more days of calm, a few more days of silence, a few more days of something, we might feel better. We might be able to continue and think and strategize and think about how we can do this, but then it rises and it rises. And that's usually at this point, we're walking on eggshells. We're really hoping that like somehow like the eggshells just like get swept away and we kind of slide back to calm, but we don't. Because as we all know, there's always an abusive incident. There's a place from where that tension becomes a volcano and then it explodes. And this is the abuser's attempt to overtly regain that power and control. It comes from insults, name calling, large fights, violence, shaming, blaming, humiliating, using the silent treatment, further gaslighting, intimidating. Those are just some things that happen, but usually the incident escalates and escalates to a point where there is a freak out. There is someone leaves. There is a moment of stonewalling. There is a moment of a breakdown in some way, but then it goes back to calm. And as these incidents keep happening, we often wonder, how are we ever going to get back there? How could we get back there? But over time, we start really sweeping these things under the rug. We really start continuing to walk on those eggshells because just as much as we hoped that they would sweep away, it's almost as if the eggshells never leave. The eggshells are always there. Like we always have something in our foot. We always feel a little off. There's always a little pain point. So the calm is actually just when we get back to it, it comes across as the repair. I don't know how many of you have had these long conversations where either they go nowhere and you just like the conversation ends because you get tired, as in like emotionally exhausted from being told what you think and how everything you thought was wrong, so that you just give in just so it ends, or that is more of a monologue where they are on their soapbox explaining everything that you did and why you did it and why you shouldn't have done it. And you thought about it that way, but you shouldn't have thought about it that way. But don't look at everything they did, because they didn't intend to hurt you, even though they did, but it's your fault because if you didn't do X, Y, and Z, they wouldn't have done that. Like, that's a lot. And so a lot of us just almost like step backwards into the calm, because that is the best that we have. And during the calm is when we actually can begin to get our head back on straight. And this is basically what I have been posting about on Threads this week is, for the most part, in healthy relationships, the ones that are talked about on those Instagram pages, they don't, your partner does not doubt your reality and your perceptions. So therefore they may want to reach calm with you. But I actually believe, and I've said this a lot, that abusers get addicted to reconciling as part of the cycle of abuse. They don't want to reconcile in the true form of a repair. They don't want to say, I did this. I am sorry. I see the impact that had on you. And in our true repair, you'd likely say, and I did this. And I don't want to have that impact on you. And let's both work together to make this strong moving forward. And here's the words that we can use. And here's the patience we're going to give. Abusers want to reconcile because they want to reaffirm the power imbalance and set up the narrative for when tensions start to rise again, that you were wrong. You did it again. It's almost like they're planting seeds for what's going to happen next when tensions start to rise again, because the last time you did this. And then we go to calm after not having any repair. And the abuser probably pretends to rebuild that calm stage. But the connection is built through this being in the cycle and not being able to get out of it. It's not built through actual repair. It's not built on two people understanding each other and wanting to better the relationship. It's built on power and control and entitlement and you being wrong. And it's almost like, how many needs of my own can I put aside in order to keep this going? How can I leave if I can't breathe? How do I even know my perception is right? There's so much nuance in the cycle of abuse. And the more I think about it, the more I think about how helpful it is to understand the cycle as it is. And also understand that it is fully based on somebody having control over you. If you are in the cycle of abuse, there really is no way to break it other than leaving or creating enough space for yourself that you can think for yourself. And I know that that might feel impossible, but I have this $19 course on boundaries on my website. And the reason it's priced so so little, is because it is what I believe is the first step. And the boundaries are not with the other person. They really are within ourselves. It's about beginning to create enough space so that we can think for ourselves. When we are outside of the cycle of abuse, we see things so much clearer. And almost any survivor will tell you that the trauma bond makes us want to stay. It makes us want to stick to them. We want to be handcuffed to them by also not, we want them to change. We want them to see something different. The cycle of it, but we can't. When we start to step away, we start to see how we're being treated and where our voice is. And for a lot of us, who we were and who we feel like we are now. And that's why I think beginning to create space as much as you can, even if it is in really, really, really small moments. I used to sit in my car. I used to take a longer way home, and I would sit in my car and I would give myself some time before I went in the house. Anything you can do like that, anything that you can to give yourself a little bit of extra time. And of course, working with somebody helps on this, because it's the validation, it's the support, it's your specific situation. It's it helps so much, but being able to have time and space and see it in the cycle. I used to even write out the cycle. Calm looks like this. But then the moment that they start feeling like they're losing power control, or they're not validated, or they have a bad day, then all of a sudden, blame, 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 shame, shame, shame. And then there's always an incident, and it's always all because of you, because you did all these things. And the reconciliation is just a way for them to find a way to reestablish power and control. So when this all happens again, it's like they keep putting more statues on the totem pole. So I hope that this was helpful. I do have another episode. It's an early episode on the cycle of abuse as a whole. I do recommend listening to it. And as always, if you have questions, if you need support, you can find me at emotionalabusecoach.com, at emotionalabusecoach on Instagram, and you can email me at jessica@jessicaknightcoaching.com.